Content of the video. Moin Moin and welcome. In this video we will go through the configuration of Shopware, so how to configure it for development. This is my current Shopware installation I will use, and it's on the domain Shopware template basic.example. You're maybe on something else if you want to follow along, but that doesn't matter, and I have the Shopware logo instead of the default demo shop logo. That's all of the changes. Of course, I have some demo data. This is the official Shopware demo data. Yeah. The backend. Let's log into the backend because I want to configure stuff. Okay. I have demo as username and password because I choose it during the installation. Now, when you're in the backend, the first thing you want to do is go to configuration, cache performance. Because what we want to do here is we want to sacrifice some of the speed that Shopware normally has for seeing the changes we are doing faster or more or less immediately. So Shopware will be a little bit slower this way, and you don't want to use it the way we are configuring it now in production. But during development, the benefit of seeing stuff immediately when we reload the page is there. Okay. So the first thing when you're here in the performance module, you want to set it to development mode. Next thing is in the settings here, HTTP cache should be unchecked. So like it is here. It should be default, but check it. Okay. Next thing is the configuration theme manager. There we have a settings button here on top. Click it, and then you have to change a little bit. The compressed CSS and compressed JavaScript uncheck, and then disable compiler caching and create CSS source maps. We are working with less in Shopware, in case you know, so these source maps point to the location in your less files where the entry you're looking at is. And the last thing, you don't have to necessarily check it, but would be better for snippet reload. So when you're introducing new snippets or changing old ones, it's reloaded immediately. And that's it. Okay, so far the Shopware configuration itself. The next thing is the file configuration, more or less. Because Shopware, this is the Shopware file system you can see here, has a config.php file. Now, depending on how you install Shopware, either through the Bitnami installer or from Git or from the official zip file. I did this, the last option for the course here, for the training. So depending on how you installed it, it may look different from the files that are there. But we will only use or work with files that all installations have, okay, or all ways of installing have. So the config.php lives in the root of Shopware. Depending on where you install Shopware, it's in a different location in your file system, but the config.php is always in the root of your Shopware folder that Apache uses to serve the Shopware installation. Okay. When we open up the config.php, it looks pretty much like this. Here again, it may differ from your installation because these these values here are different, but the entries stay the same. So what do we have here? We have an array, so a collection of values or key value pairs. And the first key here is DB for database, and the value that comes after this little arrow is again an array, so again a collection of keys and values. Now what I want to do first is switch this to short syntax. Short syntax means that it is exactly the same, but looks better. Okay, so we can delete the array here and replace it with a bracket like this. And the same for the inner array. Okay. It's the same, but it looks a little bit different. And for me, at least, it's easier to read and less confusing as the long array syntax, which is just there because that was the way that PHP started defining arrays, and now they said, okay, this is nicer here. Great. Now we didn't do any configuring yet. And of course I can just show you how to do it, but it's nicer to know where it comes from and where you can find it yourself if you're not in looking at this video right now when you're developing. Okay, we have an engine folder here. And in the engine folder is everything that belongs to the Shopware core plus old plugins. So in the engine folder, you have the Shopware folder, there you have the configs folder, and there is a default PHP. And this default PHP holds all configuration values that are configurable via your config PHP. When you open it up, it's quite big, as you can see here. And all these values or key value pairs here are configuring Shopware. So most of these you won't need, okay? Especially not during development. But some are important. For example, here's your database configuration and you're overriding this. But what you can see here is that we have different additional options that are not in the default config PHP that is created from Shopware during the installation or by Shopware. So the next thing we can look at is the front section here, where it is defined that we do not throw exceptions, so errors are not shown to you. Show exceptions, throw exceptions. Then another interesting thing would be the PHP settings where display errors is 0. So when it's configured like this, you don't see any errors. And when you're working on templates, you can create accidentally errors that break Shopware. So we want to see them. The next thing that is interesting is the snippets. I missed them. There they are. This is something that can come in handy, the snippet stuff, because snippets are a way to translate texts in Shopware. And if you're working on snippets, you want to live reload them, but later on. Okay. So this is where you find everything in case you forget stuff. But there has to be an easier way than to copy all this and then change it. And there is. Back to the browser. Go to developers.shopware.com. Here you can find basically everything you need to develop Shopware. Of course, there are the community forums and the Gitter chat, but this is your first stop for Shopware development. Okay, we have a little search box over here, and when I type in config.php, then we have the config.php settings section, and there we have example development configuration. Awesome. Let's click it. And here, when we expand code, we have a complete configuration. Of course, this is already in our config.php. So we need this here. Not all of it, but I will tell you in a moment. So let's copy this and back to the editor. We don't need the default anymore. Now, the first DB key has the array as value. Then there is a comma here, new line, and paste. Okay, we can clean this up a little bit like this. Yeah, awesome. Okay, the first front, show exception, throw exception is to what it says, throw and show exceptions. So errors that happened during compiling the code or interpreting the code. Then we have the PHP settings, right, new line here. PHP settings with display errors 1. This is 0 by default, so it doesn't show any errors, but we want to show him errors. We want it to show errors. Then we have template force compile true, so we don't have to compile via backend. When we do changes to the theme, it is just shown on reload. The CSRF protection is something we don't need for theme development, and it's the default here anyway, so we can just delete it. Then we have the HTTP cache debug true. We don't use the HTTP cache, but it doesn't hurt to just leave it in there. Okay, so this is the default or the minimal development configuration for Shopware for theme developing, and that's it. Thanks for watching.